This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hello, and welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alex Masper. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode and continuing to listen to the show. I very much appreciate it. Before I start talking anything sports, I want to remind you guys to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. You always get those alerts on your phone, on your laptop, on your apps, however you may be listening. And again, you get those notifications, you get those alerts, so you're always aware of when we drop a new episode here at the GSMC Sports Podcast. So we would really appreciate it if you would subscribe to the show. Also, make sure to leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcasting app or website you are listening to this on. We would very much appreciate that as well. It gives us a big boost of confidence. Also, make sure to follow us on all social media platforms. That's Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We would love to interact with you guys more on social media, all of those platforms. Whatever you are on social media platform-wise, we are on those as well. And again, we would love to interact with you about the show, about sports news, really about anything. So make sure you give us a follow there on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We would really appreciate that as well. I hope wherever you are and however you may be listening, you and your family are happy and healthy during these trying times in the world today. We have a fantastic show for you all today. Later on in the show, we're going to be giving you more information, everything we know about the NBA. I'm going to be going deep diving into some of the games that have been happening. A little bit later on in the show, I'm going to be talking about the Los Angeles Clippers and why they should be the favorites for the NBA championship. Also, why the Houston Rockets are legit. Why it might be time to break up Philadelphia. I've been hinting at it and kind of talking about it the last 2 episodes. But with some news about Ben Simmons, it's really looking like this team is going to break up, and I want to give some potential trade destinations to some of those teams. And finally, at the very end of the show, I've been doing this a lot recently. I did it again last episode with the Arizona Cardinals. I want to be doing a deep dive on some of the most interesting teams in the league, going game by game on their schedule. I've done the Patriots, the Cowboys, the Buccaneers, and the Arizona Cardinals. Today is the Cleveland Browns. At the very end of the episode, I will be going through game by game of the Cleveland Browns schedule, giving you wins, giving you losses, some key matchups, and I will come to a conclusion on where I think they will stand as a record standpoint and their division, everything like that. So we'll get into everything Cleveland Browns for the very end. The last segment of the episode, we'll be doing a deep dive on their schedule. Of course, though, we're going to start with the Los Angeles Lakers, as the sports world always is dominated by them and LeBron James. Ladies and gentlemen, the Lakers are in trouble. I don't care that they've clinched the 1 seed. It doesn't matter to me. It just, when it comes to seeding, right? So there's no home and away. Everything's in the bubble. It's on a neutral court. It doesn't really matter about seeding anymore. Matchups matter, obviously, but you already know the Los Angeles Lakers are going to be facing whoever the 8th seed is. It's looking most likely Portland. New Orleans has taken a big slip up. The Phoenix Suns are undefeated, so if I had to guess right now, it's looking towards like a Suns-Blazers playing game. But if the Suns can't make it, it's looking like it would be a Blazers-Grizzlies playing game, in which I would give the advantage to the Blazers there. So my favorites now to get the 8th seed are the Blazers, meaning they would face the Lakers in the first round. And I get it. They've already clinched the number 1 seed. These S games essentially don't matter for them, but I want to kind of reiterate what I explained before in my last episode, that these games matter a lot to certain people with the Los Angeles Lakers. And in my opinion, that's everybody but LeBron James. The only person that these games don't really do anything for, from a personal stats standpoint, is LeBron James, right? Anthony Davis likes to prove that he's one of the top 5 players in the world, so that helps with him. And like I've mentioned before, the only thing that matters to LeBron in these games which I would argue is maybe more important than his own personal stats. And, he, of course, he's great and everything like that. LeBron James over these next week and what he's been doing all bubble is looking for somebody besides Anthony Davis that's going to help him in the fourth quarter. Because this is a two-man game right now. It's Anthony Davis and it's LeBron James. And we've seen when they've been stopped, when they've been held under 35 points, like what happened against the Toronto Raptors, they get absolutely smoked and they don't win. And that is a serious problem because they are going to face teams with either really good defenses or a duo that's just as capable of putting up the same amount of points, teams like the Rockets. But they're also going to face teams that are a matchup with them defensively and could hold them, Anthony Davis and LeBron James, to under 50 points or under 45 points. A team like the Los Angeles Clippers, like we've seen time and time again, right? What matters for the next week for the Lakers is who's the guy that's going to step up. It's got to be Kyle Kuzma, in my opinion. He hasn't been doing it the past couple of games. When he started off in the bubble kind of red hot, shooting about 50% from three, it's kind of tailed off since then. The best player from a third wheel standpoint that's looked the best to me is Dion Waiters. And again, credit to Dion Waiters for looking better than I think a lot of people expected him to look. But even then, he's not very good. Kyle Kuzma, last game against the Houston Rockets, had a good night. He had 21 points, 8 of 16 for shooting, only 1 of 4 from 3. You'd like to see that cleaned up. So he had a bounce-back game. The past couple games, they were rough for him. But what happened, right? So I'm obviously talking about the game against the Houston Rockets. LeBron James does not play. They said soreness or they said some sort of quad injury. That's rest. That's code word for load management. You already know all that. So LeBron isn't playing because of rest. Again, these games don't matter to him personally. And it was interesting to see how does this Lakers team do with just Anthony Davis, right? Anthony Davis only plays, he was playing, he played 30 minutes, he only had 17 points, 12 rebounds, 3 assists. Kyle Kuzma was the team's leading scorer, and they lost. The Houston Rockets destroyed the Los Angeles Lakers. They won by almost 20, I believe they won by 15 or 16. Again, they also were playing without Russell Westbrook, so it was just James Harden and a bunch of guys. Yes, I understand that James Harden drops 40. Okay, he didn't score the other, 73 points that the Houston Rockets scored. So the Houston Rockets surrounding core, right? So you have it's pretty much these two teams were playing their one superstar or one of their two superstars and their surrounding cast, and the Rockets absolutely dismantled the Los Angeles Lakers. What does that tell you, folks? What does that tell you? It tells you that the surrounding cast around the superstars for the Houston Rockets is better than the Los Angeles Lakers. And they're not the only team to have a better surrounding cast, specifically in the West. The Los Angeles Clippers do as well. You could argue that some other teams as well, maybe the Denver Nuggets, they're lacking the superstars, but they have the surrounding cast. If Michael Porter Jr., like I talked about in my last episode, continues to put up, psycho stats, then maybe. But this is the problem for the Lakers. This team is not good. This team, without LeBron James, is not good. If LeBron James was not on the Los Angeles Lakers, and this was Anthony Davis on the roster that we just saw, what seed are the Los Angeles Lakers in the West? I'm saying 6th. I think if Anthony Davis is the only superstar on the Los Angeles Lakers and LeBron James is not there, the exact same roster that we just saw get blown out by the Houston Rockets without Russell Westbrook, the Los Angeles Lakers are a 6th seed. LeBron James is taking a 6th seed in the West to the number 1 team in the West. That is how good LeBron James is. Now, we know this. LeBron James is an all-time great. He is either the first or second greatest basketball player of all time. In my opinion, he's the best all-around player maybe, probably the most versatile player as well. He doesn't have the scoring that MJ had or the titles that MJ had, obviously, or maybe necessarily the intensity, things like that. They're different personalities, of course, different eras. So we know how good LeBron James is, and this is why I have LeBron James. I believe he should win Most Valuable Player. I don't think he will. I think it'll go to Giannis. But LeBron James is making a 6th seed team look like the best team in the NBA or the second best team in the NBA right next to Milwaukee. And that team is beating the Clippers with him, and they're beating some other teams as well. And they'll make a deep playoff run. I think they'll get to the Western Conference Finals, riding the coattails of LeBron James. But if I'm a Lakers fan, I am concerned. I am concerned about one person in particular, and that's Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis is kind of starting to prove some of the rumors, some of the narratives that he was getting during the Pelicans days of, oh my God, this guy is uber talented, probably the most talented all-around big man in the entire NBA on both ends of the floor. He just doesn't have that dog in him. He just doesn't have that, killer instinct, that mentality. All those cliches that sports people throw around in the sports media and, in the national media, everything like that. And to be honest with you, I don't necessarily buy into all those rumors, specifically ones that have been made about LeBron, that, LeBron isn't clutch. LeBron doesn't have the killer instinct that, Kobe or Michael had. He does. He can turn it on whenever the hell he wants and he goes off, right? We know how good LeBron James is. But this is the type of game where I see Anthony Davis kind of take a backseat to Kyle Kuzma, right? In a game on national television against the Houston Rockets, a chance to prove that you're a top 5 player in the world. Again, Anthony Davis, 17 points, 12 rebounds, 3 assists, 5 of 8 from the field. He only took 8 shots. 8 shots in 30 minutes. He's not assertive enough. That's just me not being assertive. And, LeBron James would get called out for that one, especially, during his Miami Heat days. I remember LeBron would play very, assertive, specifically in that first year with the Heat. And I remember Mario Chalmers one time, who was the point guard at the time, yelled at LeBron, and LeBron, yelled at him back, and it was a whole story, right? We yell at LeBron James for not being assertive enough. We yell at a lot of other, some of these superstars for not being assertive enough. They're not taking 20 shots a game. There should be no night, in my opinion, for the Los Angeles Lakers ever in any game where Anthony Davis takes less shots than Kyle Kuzma, in my opinion. When they're both healthy and they're both playing similar minutes. It's just facts, in my opinion. Why is Kyle Kuzma taking 8 more shots than Anthony Davis and almost more free throws than Anthony Davis as well, and 4 more three-pointers than Anthony Davis? Is Kyle Kuzma the second superstar on this team? Because last time I checked, it's Anthony Davis, the guy who they traded Brandon Ingram, Lonzo Ball, Josh Hart, and picks for. Right? He needs to be assertive. Anthony Davis on that game against the Houston Rockets should have touched the ball on every single offensive possession that he was on the floor. He should have clapped his hands, wanted it on the low block or from the elbow, and then run the offense through Anthony Davis. Instead, we had the Kyle Kuzma show, which is great for Kyle Kuzma's personal stats. Again, 21 points. He played great. You're not going to win a game. You're not going to win a game when Kyle Kuzma is your number one scorer unless he's dropping 50 or something. You're not going to win a game when Anthony Davis is only shooting 8 shots. 8 shots. And it's not like he was shooting poorly that night. He was 5 of 8 from the field, 7 of 9 from the free throw line. Why weren't you shooting more? It's not that he was having a terrible night and he was like, oh, it's not my night, I'm just going to defer to Kuzma, defer to these other guys. He was having a great night. He was shooting, 65% from the floor? And he just decided that I'm going to kick back and relax and watch these other guys do it. And that's just not going to cut it, because there's going to be stretches, 5-minute stretches, 8-minute stretches, maybe even 10-minute stretches, where Anthony Davis is the only superstar on the court, going against the Clippers, the Rockets, the Blazers maybe in the first round, the Nuggets in the second round, the Jazz, where I need Anthony Davis touching the ball on every offensive possession, and I need him shooting the ball a minimum of every third possession. Anthony Davis should be shooting the ball. Anthony Davis should be shooting a minimum of 16 shots a night. With his offensive talent, with his efficiency, with his three-point shooting, with his in-paint ability, and also with him on the defensive floor, there should be stretches where he's the best player on the floor when LeBron James is not on the court. You have to show everybody you're the second best player in the league, or you're the top 5 player in the league. Because eventually, also, if you're a Lakers fan, you got to think about the future here. LeBron James is going to leave at some point, right? Whether it's retirement or he's going to go to another team, go back to Cleveland. Who knows how LeBron's going to end his career, right? And Anthony Davis is not like some of these other guys that have been brought in to help LeBron James, like Kevin Love or Chris Bosh, right? Anthony Davis is the future of the Los Angeles Lakers. They want to eventually pair, Anthony Davis with a guy like Trae Young, Devin Booker, some young guard probably in the next 5 to 7 years after LeBron is gone and left LA and maybe left the NBA. They're going to want to pair him with somebody, and it'll be the Anthony Davis show. This is a glimpse of the Anthony Davis show. 8 shots on a nationally televised game. But Lakers fans will tell me, oh my God, they already clinched the 1 seed. Who cares, right? They already clinched the 1 seed. They already know who they're going to play. It's going to be either the Grizzlies or the Blazers. It doesn't matter, right? We're resting LeBron. It doesn't matter. It does matter. It does. This shows what Anthony Davis is sometimes. Sometimes he's assertive. I find a lot of times when he's on the floor with LeBron James, and LeBron James constantly feeds him the ball, always a bounce pass on the elbow, or makes Anthony Davis want to, dominate and be assertive. And we've seen it. We've seen 34-point outings. We've seen 45-point outings where he just absolutely takes over, and he can't miss from the elbow, or can't miss from the low block, or can't miss from 3, and he gets hot. He has the ability to do that every single night, right? James Harden, we saw it, is one of the most assertive players in basketball. Every single night, James Harden is taking God knows how many shots, 20 shots, right? That's what AD needs to do. AD has the talent. AD has the skill. He has the ability. There's very few nights where Anthony Davis has a rough shooting night and he's shooting a low percentage from 3 or from the field. Again, on a night where he only shoots 8 shots, right? You would expect, 1 for 8. He was playing terrible. Or he only played, 20 minutes? Nope. 30 minutes and was 5 for 8. He was playing great. He just decided not to shoot the ball. Decided to not be assertive. Decided, this is not my team. I'm just going to be you can't you can't always be the beta. You can't always be the B player, right? Even when LeBron James is on the court. Sometimes AD is going to have to take over. LeBron has rough shooting nights all the time. LeBron has rough nights from the free throw line. LeBron has nights where he's the one who's passive and he's just trying to get assists and trying to get other guys involved, specifically early on in playoff games. LeBron does that a lot until he kind of turns it on in the second half, specifically the fourth quarter. There's going to be stretches where Anthony Davis is going to have to carry this offense. When LeBron's off the floor and Kuzma isn't shooting 50% from three, AD, shoot a mid-ranger. Touch the ball every offensive possession. Turn around and pull up from the elbow. Put somebody in the prison chamber on the low block and absolutely punish them in the paint. You have the ability. You're maybe the most skillful big man in the entire league. You gotta be more assertive. I need it from Anthony Davis. I need that killer instinct. I need that alpha. I need that dog. And again, I usually don't buy into those narratives. I think a lot of these NBA players have that dog in them. They just don't show it, or it just wasn't their night. But this is a consistent problem with Anthony Davis where he's not taking enough shots despite shooting really well, and he's always just deferred to LeBron James. There are games where we see AD at his full potential taking 25 shots, getting 42 points, 12 rebounds, and 10 assists. We've seen those games. He has the ability to do that every night. Anthony Davis has the ability to get 25 to 30 points every single night. Just take the appropriate amount of shots, man. No, very few Anthony Davis shots are bad looks or are bad ideas, right? The coach isn't going to bench him. The fans are going to come at his neck because he'll be scoring them. He'll be getting them in. Again, 5 of 8 for only taking 8 shots. I need a more aggressive Anthony Davis for the Los Angeles Lakers in the playoffs. And the surrounding cast, again, it's just not good enough for a championship team. In my next segment, I'll be talking about the Clippers, who have the best supporting cast in all of basketball, and they have a championship team. This Lakers team is not a championship team. It's a 2-man game of LeBron James and Anthony Davis, and Kyle Kuzma every 5th night will have a good night. I need more assertiveness from AD, otherwise the Lakers aren't going to get far in the playoffs. And again, this is just a 2-man game. I expect a Western Conference Finals of them and the Clippers. And maybe it goes to 7. Maybe it even doesn't even get there. Maybe it goes to only 5 or 6. And my money's on the Clippers. I'll talk about them in my next segment as well as some other Western Conference teams. We'll get into all that right after this short break.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Again, I am Alex Massford. Thank you so much for tuning in. I just finished talking about the Los Angeles Lakers, and I really do believe that they are not a championship team. And again, I just don't see enough, assertiveness from Anthony Davis. Again, just 8 shots, man. I understand that the game in theory doesn't matter, again, because you already have the number 1 seed, but from your second best player, when LeBron is not there, I need you to show me why you are the future of the Los Angeles Lakers in a big game, in a big nationally televised game. I wish I could have seen more from Anthony Davis and the Lakers. I want to switch gears now to some other basketball teams, predominantly the Los Angeles Clippers, who I believe should and are the championship favorites in the NBA. Now, on the flip side, right, of the Lakers is obviously the Clippers. Now, the Los Angeles Clippers and the Los Angeles Lakers have been considered, I believe, 1 and 2 for probably championship odds ever since Kawhi and Paul George were on the team. Got traded at like 3 o'clock in the morning which was obviously incredible. I remember like still being awake and getting all those, Woj bombs and everything like that. So they play today, and they beat the Portland Trailblazers, who, by the way, are playing some of the best basketball in maybe the entirety of the bubble, maybe only second to probably, the Phoenix Suns, who are still undefeated. They play the Miami Heat tonight or yesterday when you're seeing this. They've been getting great basketball from Carmelo and some other players, and I'll talk about the Blazers later on in this segment. And the Clippers win by 5. And on the surface, you're like, oh, wow, really close game. And then you remember that Kawhi Leonard and Patrick Beverley didn't play. And they still beat maybe the highest performing team in the bubble so far, the Portland Trailblazers, in a game that mattered significantly to Portland. And, the Clippers rested Kawhi and everything like that. That right there, folks, is the difference between the Los Angeles Clippers and the Los Angeles Lakers. The supporting cast and the second superstars. Now, I think Anthony Davis is better than Paul George, and I would have Anthony Davis 10 out of 10, so I would give the slight edge to the second superstar to the Lakers. But from a supporting cast, folks, it's not close. There's nobody on the Lakers that's like Lou Williams. There's nobody on the Lakers that's like, Montrezl Harrell when he comes back. Again, no Montrezl Harrell in this game either. They still beat the Portland Trailblazers. There's really nobody on the Lakers like Marcus Morris. Maybe that's their Kyle Kuzma. So you're already looking at the 4th or 5th best player on the Los Angeles Clippers is as good as the 3rd best player on the Lakers. Not to mention they play so much like a team. You forget that this Clippers supporting cast was the 8th seed last year in the playoffs and took the Golden State Warriors to 6, maybe even 7 games when Kevin Durant was fully healthy and they had everybody. Steph, Clay, Draymond, everybody was in there if you remember a year ago. And the Clippers really, really gave it to them, and they almost won that with just Montrezl Harrell and Lou Williams. They are the deepest team in the league, and I think they're probably one of the deepest teams in NBA history. You already know what Kawhi Leonard's going to do. You already know what Paul George is going to do. By the way, Paul George, everyone has like kind of slammed him, over the years, specifically those Indiana years and even those OKC years of, playoff P doesn't exist, he's not good in the clutch, we're the game winners. Paul George has been hitting a lot of clutch, specifically from 3 in the late 4th quarter of this game. He did it again, against the Trailblazers. Folks, the Clippers are legit. They're the number 1 team in the NBA. I think they're going to go to the finals, and I think they're going to roll through everybody, in my opinion. I really do believe that. The toughest competition for them is going to be the Lakers, I guess, just because of all the hype. And again, just because of LeBron James, really. Really just because of LeBron James and kind of Anthony Davis when he wants to. But really because of LeBron James. The Los Angeles Clippers are going to win the NBA Finals this year, bearing an injury, bearing everything like that. They don't even have Montrezl Harrell back. He's expected to come back at some point. Again, their bench, it's just ridiculous, man. Reggie Jackson had 17. Landry Shamet, 19 off the bench. JaMychal Green, 13 off the bench. Lou Williams, 12 off the bench in just 18 minutes. Ronnie Magruder hit a go-ahead 3, a guy who never even comes into the game. Had a clutch 3 to take the lead and put the dagger against the Portland Trailblazers. When you have a team like that, where your 13th, 14th, maybe even 15th man is hitting clutch 3s against teams that are pushing for the playoffs, good high-level teams, a guy against Damian Lillard, against CJ McCollum, against Jusuf Nurkic, against Carmelo Anthony, who was, has been great for them as well. When Ronnie Magruder is killing them, this team is deep. This team's going to win the finals. I don't even think it's close. They match up well against everybody. Can you honestly think of a team right now that, the Clippers don't match well against? They have the size, they have the speed, they have the athleticism, they have, again, the deepness, they have, all-around scoring players. They're not just a paint-driven team. They score from all phases of the floor. Again, the shooting, the mid-range from Kawhi, and obviously the driving ability as well. They're also maybe, top 3 defensive team in the league? They have, a top 5 head coach in the league? We've really romanticized the Lakers because of LeBron James. And again, LeBron James is making this 6th seed certain nights look like a 1st seed. It's just, let's call it how it is, right? The Los Angeles Lakers would be a 6th seed in the West without LeBron James? Maybe a 6th seed in the West without LeBron James. He's making them look like the best player, the best team in basketball on some nights. We gotta give credit where credit's due, man. The Lakers have built a team that is not good enough to beat the Clippers. The Clippers, Steve Ballmer, all those guys, they've come out, they've built the team to beat the Lakers, they've built the team to beat the Bucks, they can handle Giannis as well, they have too much shooting for some teams to handle, too much, who's guarding Lou Williams, man? Every time, just think about it, who is guarding Lou Williams off your bench, off your favorite team's bench, off any playoff team's bench? Who is guarding Lou Williams? The Clippers are legitimate, they are the best team in the NBA in my opinion, and I'm not sure It's really that close. I want to switch gears now to their opponent, the Portland Trail Blazers. Now, the Trail Blazers are a very good team. I'm expecting them now to be the 8th seed in the playoffs. They'll probably get a play-in game. I'm expecting the Grizzlies, but again, if the Phoenix Suns continue what they've been doing, then obviously there's a good chance that, it's going to be Suns versus Blazers in that play-in game. That's what I think is going to happen in my opinion. And I'm going to give it to the Blazers on that one. A lot of people talking about, Charles Barkley said that the Blazers are going to be in the finals. I wouldn't say that, but I really do believe that the Blazers should have never been in this position. They should never have been fighting for a playoff spot. All these other teams that are competing for that 8th seed, the Blazers have more talent. They have more superstars. I mean, they got Dame Lillard, CJ McCollum, a really good coach. I mean, they went to the Western Conference Finals last year. I'm really interesting. I kind of want to even almost do a deep dive off air, for my next episode, like, why did maybe you guys can tell me, why did the Blazers stumble so much in the regular season? Was it just because how hard the Western Conference was? Did it take a while for Dame, CJ, and Melo to really get meshed together? Because now I watch them in the bubble and they look fantastic. They look one of the best trios in the NBA. So, I mean, it's an interesting question. Now, some people have been talking about on Twitter, should the Lakers be scared of the Portland Trail Blazers, right? When the first round matchup rolls around. I think so. I really believe so, man. I mean, if you're the Los Angeles Lakers, right? I know this has been a lot about the Lakers, but that's what the NBA is. That's what sports is. Who's guarding Damian Lillard? Who's guarding CJ McCollum? Right? It'll be AD versus Nurkic. I like that matchup. I like AD over Nurkic, right? LeBron against Melo. LeBron's going to torch Melo, but Melo will get his as well. Who's guarding Dame Lillard? I expect that series, to be honest with you, to go to 7. I really do. 6 or 7, honestly. If the Trailblazers are playing like how they're playing, I mean, again, Trailblazers have some nice pieces off the bench too. Again, I would definitely take the Lakers. I think the Lakers are going to get to the Western Conference Finals, but it's not going to be the traditional LeBron James, let me sweep everybody in the first 2 rounds and we'll see you in the Eastern Conference Finals and we'll see what happens then. No, this is going to be tough. It wouldn't surprise me at all if LeBron has, 7 games against, the Trailblazers, next round 7 game against the Rockets, next round 7 games against the Clippers, right? I think that's what's going to happen with the Los Angeles Lakers, and I would be scared if I were the Los Angeles Lakers and I were Lakers fans about the matchup against Portland. The biggest weakness in the Los Angeles Lakers team is poor defensive guard play. They do not have good guards. I don't consider LeBron a guard. I understand that he's playing point guard for the Los Angeles Lakers right now, but when you really look at it, he's the small forward of the team, right? I know he takes the ball up and everything, but on the defensive end, who's guarding Damian Lillard? Do you trust Dion Waiters, Alex Caruso, Quentin Cook, J.R. Smith to lock down, Dame Dollar, Dame Time, Damian Lillard, one of the best clutch shooters in the entire league? I don't. I expect Dame Lillard to get 30 every single point, every single game in that series, and I expect CJ to get 22 to 27 every single night. Will the Lakers be able to weather that storm? Will AD and LeBron be able to combine for 50, 60 points a night? That's what it's going to take for the Los Angeles Lakers to win a championship, but I would be scared. I would be scared of the Portland Trail Blazers. They are a dangerous team. They are playing with everything on the line right now. Right? Some of these other teams, right? Specifically the Lakers, and sometimes the Bucks as well, they're trying to turn it off and on. Oh, we want to rest everybody. Let's just get into the playoffs healthy, and then, we'll just turn it back on in the playoffs. That's not as easy as people think. That's not as easy. Very few teams will be able to legitimately turn it off and on. I don't trust the Lakers to turn it off and on. You think if the Lakers just kind of fall, ass backwards and stumble through this next week and only win a game or 2, and at least we got there healthy, you expect them, boom, you gotta turn it on game 1 against the Portland Trail Blazers, who've just been playing their heart out the past 2 weeks, just won a play-in game, right, to get here into this spot. They're on fire right now. They're playing the best basketball of their lives. And you're supposed to just turn it on and stop that? I don't believe that for a second. I think they're playing with fire, man. They're playing with fire. Also, can we talk about Carmelo Anthony? How the hell was Carmelo Anthony not on a roster for months and months? This new Carmelo Anthony is starting to look like, literally, this is what everybody thought Carmelo has really evolved here. Carmelo has always wanted to be this bull in a china shop, clap his hands, give me the ball at the low post, and let me work my magic in the mid-range game and, around the rim, things like that. Carmelo Anthony has finally adapted. He knows what he is. He is a spot-up shooter and occasional ISO player. What is he doing? Oh, he's consistently getting, 17 to 22 points a game. Shout out Carmelo Anthony. He's also playing, I think, I don't want to say the best defense of his career, because it wouldn't surprise me if early on in his career he was playing better defense just because of how athletic he was back then with the Denver Nuggets. But this is better defense I've seen from Carmelo than definitely he played in New York. 100% OKC and Houston as well. Carmelo's looking really good as a defender. He's a plus defender right now. I'm looking at the analytics, so he's not a defensive liability for the Trailblazers. He was probably a defensive liability for Houston and for OKC as well, and probably for the Knicks. He was just that good offensively, obviously, back then as well. So it's really interesting to see the evolution of Carmelo Anthony. He knows what he is. He's lost a lot of weight. Carmelo's just been really, really good, man. Again, he's 36 years old, but he's been doing it. He's been doing it against, 21 points against the Clippers. He had 15 against Houston, only 7 against Denver, right? He averaged 15 points this regular season. That's what we wanted from Carmelo. Not to mention he's been clutch. Like, we know how clutch Damian Lillard is. And tonight against the Clippers, they were really 2 free throws away from, taking it to overtime or potentially winning. Obviously, Ronnie Magruder hit that 3. If Damian Lillard doesn't even have to be the clutch guy on this team, if you trust Carmelo Anthony in the fourth quarter, who might get some wide open looks because of, again, the double coverage on Dame Lillard and the trapping and, just trying to get the ball away from him, make him pass out of a double team, things like that. Again, man, the Trailblazers are playing for everything. They're playing for their season right now. They're playing for their legacy. Dame's playing for his legacy. Carmelo is definitely playing for his legacy as well, right? They're playing with everything they got. They're going to go win a play-in game probably against Memphis or maybe against Phoenix. They're going to be that 8th seed, and they're playing the best basketball of their lives. Dame Lillard's averaging 35. Carmelo's averaging 17. CJ's averaging 22. Nurkic is back. He's really getting his legs under him. He's averaging 15 and 10. And you're telling me the Lakers, who have just been kind of cruising the past 2 weeks, are just going to boom, flip it back on, and we'll see you, and we'll play hard, and we'll get you? Like, I just don't see it, folks. I don't see it in my opinion. All right, we're going to take another short break. On the other side of it, some potential NBA transactions that happen in the offseason. I'm talking Donovan Mitchell. I'm talking, Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, Zach LaVine, Victor Oladipo. We're going to recap all 4 of those guys. What are some destinations that I think could happen? Because I think people are going to be on the move this offseason. A lot of people are going to be on the move, more than people think. We'll get into all of that right after this break.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, folks, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Again, I am Alex Massford. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode and continuing to listening to the show. I just finished talking about the Los Angeles Lakers, the Los Angeles Lakers, the Los Angeles Clippers, and the Portland Trailblazers. Some of my thoughts on their teams. Some of the 3 most interesting teams in the entire NBA right now, definitely in the bubble as well. And I want to talk about now, kind of looking forward in the future of the offseason. I've talked about a lot about players and, transactions. I haven't really given a hard, concrete, prediction or anything like that of where I believe these players will actually end up in the offseason. And I want to do that now. So I want to go through some of the players that I believe could potentially be on the move. And if they were to be traded, what are some of the more favorite teams I would, think that they could be linked to? Where do I think they will actually end up? Things like that. So let's just get right into it for the next minute, couple minutes or so, right? Let's start off with, I think, the most likely person to be traded this offseason. I really do believe that's Zach LaVine. Now, people will say Victor Oladipo too, and he would be a very, very close second. But there's been more reports now that, the owner of the Chicago Bulls is actually going to hang on to Jim Boylen. You already know that, Jim Boylen and Zach LaVine do not get along. I think it's one of the worst, player-coach relationships I've ever seen. There's been yelling on the sidelines, things like that, and it looks like Jim Boylen's actually coming back. So I actually believe Zach LaVine will be traded. Now, in my opinion, Zach LaVine being traded, it might be one of the few players that is moved this offseason that isn't to a contender. Zach LaVine screams to me like the guy that you want to take, to, a team that's struggling a little bit and make him either the face of your franchise or the perfect co-star to another player. He would be the perfect co-star to guys in this league. Again, ridiculous amount of points, great shooter, extreme athleticism. I believe he's only, 23, 24, 25 years old. Again, one of the most underappreciated, one of the most underrated players in the entire league. And again, it would not surprise me at all if the Chicago Bulls are going to move off him, specifically with everything going on with Jim Boylen. So here are a couple teams that I believe will be really interested in Zach LaVine and where I believe he could potentially go. Number one is a team that's going to, I don't want to guarantee that they're going to add a star in the offseason via trade this offseason, but they're going to be hunting for one more than anybody else, and that's the Miami Heat. They know that while they have really promising parts of the future, Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo, that their window with Jimmy Butler isn't as big as their guys with the future. And Pat Riley, again, I've mentioned this before, and it's been reported multiple times. Pat Riley wants his one championship ring, and he wants to retire to his beautiful home in Malibu, California. That's all he wants. And if that means going after a guy quickly, he might be willing to overpay, might be willing to give up an extra draft picks down the line, a young player like a Hero, like a Nunn, like a Robinson. I think anybody besides Bam Adebayo out of the young core is on the table, depending on the guy. I just don't think it's Zach LaVine for the Miami Heat. I think they're in for a bigger fish, somebody I'll talk about at the end of this segment, who I believe is also on the move and could shake the NBA to its core. I'll be talking about him later in the segment. But I really do believe that the Miami Heat are on the hunt for a star to pair with Jimmy Butler. And again, they're willing to move on from some guys to win now. We know that this is what the Miami Heat do. Specifically since I don't want to call it rebuild or retool. Whatever this era of Jimmy Butler is, I think it's better than people expected, and maybe even better than the Heat expected. I don't think they expected to be a top 4 seed in the East. I thought that they would probably be 5 at best. Now it's looking like they're going to be top 4. So that's interesting. And of course, Jimmy Butler having a career year. So the Heat might be on the lookout for Zach LaVine. Could a package surrounding, what would it cost? Would Pat Riley be willing to give up Tyler Hero for Zach LaVine? Does Tyler Hero's ceiling better than what Zach LaVine is now? That's a debate. I don't see it for the Miami Heat. Another team that makes a lot of sense. 2 teams really that are in the same boat. The Phoenix Suns and the Atlanta Hawks. 2 outstanding guards in each of their team. Trae Young, Devin Booker. They need freaking co-stars, man. They need to be in the playoffs. They're one of the best basketball players in the entire league. We're finally seeing Devin Booker play some meaningful basketball right now, and he looks like a young Kobe Bryant. Like, let's be real. He's hitting game winners in Kawhi and Paul George's face. It's absolutely ridiculous. Devin Booker, get this man some help. In Atlanta as well, Trae Young's in that Devin Booker boat. He's just not there yet, where it's like, okay, can we please get this man some help? He's one of the best players in the entire NBA. He needs the help. Let's help out Trae Young. So I do believe that that's what's going to happen. I think eventually Zach LaVine is going to be moved. Now, the most likely destination for me, there's also a couple of other teams. The Denver Nuggets come to mind. Again, I think they're going to want to make a move, but in order for the Nuggets to make a move, they need to move on from Michael Porter Jr. probably. That's what teams are going to ask for. They don't have a ton of young assets outside of Michael Porter Jr. and Bol Bol, and I don't think Michael Porter Jr. is worth trading for unless you're getting, a Bradley Beal maybe, Donovan Mitchell, who I'll talk about at the end of the segment, right? Otherwise, I don't think it's worth it because I think Michael Porter Jr.'s ceiling is so high. So for Zach LaVine, I don't think the Nuggets are in on him. Where is Zach LaVine going to go? I really do believe it's going to come down to 2 teams. One is Philadelphia, okay? If Philadelphia is going to split up Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, which I'll also talk about in this segment, some potential destinations for both of those 2 guys, Chicago makes a lot of sense for either one of them, and Zach LaVine straight up, or, with some picks as well, would make a lot of sense, okay? Zach LaVine is a plus shooter, uber athletic, would fit with either Simmons or Embiid, in my opinion, would make a lot of sense. The team that I think is going to trade for Zach LaVine when he eventually comes on the market, I think this is when the Knicks hit. I think this is when the Knicks finally pull through and they get a player. Zach LaVine isn't going to have this, this super aggressive, super short, wish list of teams. He's just going to get the hell out of Jim Boylen, hell out of Chicago. He'll go to a bad team. New York makes a lot of sense. They're looking for a star. The New York Knicks, in order to attract free agents, need to already have good players there. They're not going to convince somebody to go save the New York Knicks like Giannis Antetokounmpo. Get Zach LaVine there, develop RJ Barrett, develop Mitchell Robinson, whoever you draft in this round, or if you trade that round, or if you trade that pick to, maybe Chicago. It makes a lot of sense, folks. That's where I think Zach LaVine's going to end up going. I really do believe this is finally the offseason. Again, Tom Thibodeau with some connections to the, Bulls front office. I think this is where Zach LaVine goes. I think he's going to be a New York Knick in the offseason. Next up, Victor Oladipo. Close second to where I believe he will be traded to. Where does Victor Oladipo want to play? He wants to play for the Miami Heat. I guarantee you his list is not going to be that long. Victor Oladipo wants to play in the Miami Heat. He lives in Miami in the offseason, trains there, very good close friends with Dwayne Wade. I just think Pat Riley's out for a bigger fish, specifically Donovan Mitchell, which I'll talk about at the end. I think Pat Riley's really going to push hard for Donovan Mitchell once I think Mitchell declines this extension in Utah this offseason, which I will also talk about. I really do believe that Victor Oladipo is out. I think there's something going on there right now. We're not going to know the full story, but they're going to want to... I think there's going to be a split, in my opinion. So, where will Victor Oladipo go? This is where I think the Nuggets come in. The Nuggets, Victor Oladipo is going to cost less than Zach LaVine, in my opinion, due to the age and due to the uncertainty about his injuries and is he fully back from that knee injury, everything like that. Send, some guys over, maybe Bobo with some picks to Indiana, who's already used to playing without Victor Oladipo. Victor Oladipo would be the perfect shooting guard for Jokic, Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr. Low-key guy, not going to be demanding the ball that often. Really good third, our 2B co-star with Jokic. That's where I believe he will end up. I really do believe Victor Oladipo is going to be a Denver Nugget. The other team that I saw besides the Miami Heat that could be interested in him is the Brooklyn Nets. They're looking to add somebody through trades of Spencer Dinwiddie, things like that. That would make a lot of sense. Dinwiddie for Depot makes a lot of sense both sides for me, even though Indiana has a lot of guards. I could see that as well, but I think the Nuggets are going to really push hard for this after they get knocked out in the second round, once they really know they're one piece away, plus more development from Michael Porter Jr. I think Oladipo will be a Denver Nugget. And if the Heat can't get Donovan Mitchell, I expect them to go full on a Victor Oladipo. If the Heat want to get Oladipo will go to the Heat. But I think, again, the Miami Heat, Pat Riley, are out for a bigger fish, specifically Donovan Mitchell. Now let's get to Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. They're going to split it up. I can almost guarantee it now, folks. They're going to get bounced in the first, maybe second round. They've already lost Ben Simmons for the season with a patella injury. They're gonna, who's going to look really good during the stretch? Joel Embiid. It's not going to translate to wins, but with Ben Simmons off the floor, the lane cleared, Joel Embiid's going to look really freaking good for the Philadelphia 76ers right now. They're going to split. They're going to fire Brett Brown. They're going to have to pick between the two. It has been shown that Cleveland has immense interest in Ben Simmons. Now, this is interesting. If they trade Ben Simmons, if they decide, hey, we're keeping JoJo, we're keeping Joel Embiid, and we're trading Ben Simmons, which is what it's looking like right now, according to reports, that they would probably favor Embiid because I think he's more the face of the franchise. Again, not what I would do. I would take Ben Simmons and surround him with shooters. But let's say either way, you can trade either Embiid or Simmons to the Cleveland Cavaliers. I don't think either of them would want to play for the Cavaliers, but I think Embiid would be more vocal about it. So let's say you're trading Simmons to the Cavaliers. If you can get Garland and some shooters and some picks, their top pick this year, that makes a lot of sense. Surround Joel Embiid with an elite point guard, one that shoots the ball, one that isn't going to clog the lane, shooters in the draft, shooters in the trade, shooters in free agency, then you're looking like a really good team there for Joel Embiid. And it also goes for Ben Simmons as well. If you want to make that trade with Joel Embiid, all of a sudden you're getting a lot of nice pieces around Ben Simmons, a lot of shooters. Again, Ben Simmons works best with the drive and kick. That's how you're going to win games. Cleveland makes a lot of sense to me. Chicago makes a lot of sense for Embiid. So do the Knicks. Will he be willing to go to one of those poor teams? That's interesting. Some people have thrown out the Miami Heat for Joel Embiid because of the Jimmy Butler connection. I don't see a Bam and Joel Embiid basketball fit working, and I think it would cost a lot for Embiid. I don't think Pat Riley is going to go for another traditional big man. Again, I think he's really sold on Bam Adebayo, really loves Bam Adebayo, so that I don't see them going after, I don't see them going after a center like Joel Embiid. I just don't see a basketball fit there, in my opinion. So again, I think Cleveland actually makes a lot of sense. They have a lot of shooters they can give up. Ben Simmons to Cleveland makes a lot of sense to me. I'm not predicting it, but that does make a lot of sense to me. Finally, Donovan Mitchell. I think Donovan Mitchell's out. Charles Barkley has said that he doesn't think he's signing an extension. Jalen Rose has said it, and there's been some reports, some rumblings about some underground bloggers and things like that in Utah. Donovan Mitchell doesn't look like he's having fun with Utah. He's doing everything he can to get them wins. He had 35 points, almost a triple-double tonight in double overtime, and he lost to the Nuggets, and he looked miserable after the game. This is who Pat Riley's after, Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell's his best friends with Bam Adebayo, the center, and he's also, Dwayne Wade has called him a prodigy. He said that he's my prodigy. He goes to all the Dwayne Wade camps. They're very close friends. Donovan Mitchell, looks up to Dwayne Wade, calls him a mentor. Dwayne Wade's going to want this. The Miami Heat fans are going to want this. Pat Riley's going to see a young D Wade paired up with Bam Adebayo, paired up with Jimmy Butler. How much will it cost? This is the question. If I'm the Miami Heat, I'm sending Tyler Hero. I love Tyler Hero. I think Tyler Hero's phenomenal. You know who Tyler Hero reminds me of? A worse version of Devin Booker, kind of like Lou Williams in my opinion. Lou Williams, not in the sense that he's going to be a consistent bench player. Lou Williams could start if he wants to. He likes being off the bench, that's the thing. He reminds me a lot of him as a player. CJ McCollum's another good comparison for Tyler Hero as well. Send Tyler Hero and send Kendrick Nunn over, along with some picks, and KZ Okpala, who they drafted at the end of the second round as well, who has a lot of high potential, people have been saying, over for Donovan Mitchell. I think the Heat are going to prioritize keeping Duncan Robinson in a trade like this because of how good of a shooter he is. They're going to need him to space the floor with a guy like Mitchell, Butler, and Bam Adebayo as well. I think Mitchell can play point guard for the team. I think they have a lot of guys that bring up the ball. Bam brings up the ball sometimes Butler, even sometimes Hero as well. Donovan Mitchell brings up the ball for Utah. It would make a lot of sense. I think Donovan Mitchell's out of Utah. He wants a bigger market. He wants a place that's going to surround him with help and be more appreciative, I think. Get him more recognition around the league. Donovan Mitchell to the Miami Heat makes a lot of sense, man. Reminds me of a lot younger D Wade. Pat Riley knows it. That's Pat Riley's type of player, man. Don't be surprised. If Donovan Mitchell's out, I think the Heat would throw everything in their power at the Utah Jazz to get him in a Miami Heat uniform. Gonna be interesting to see. We're gonna take one final break. On the other side of this last short break, we're gonna be breaking down the Cleveland Browns schedule game by game. I'm gonna tell you where I believe they will end up one of the most interesting teams in the league. As always, the Cleveland Browns. We'll be breaking down their schedule right after this break.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, again brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. Again, thank you so much for listening. I'm going to wrap it up here. I'm going to be done talking about the NBA for the rest of the, scenarios and things like that. I want to switch gears to the NFL. I'm going to continue my series that I've been kind of doing on this show, breaking down game by game, on their schedule, some of the more interesting watches in the NFL. I've done the Cowboys, the Buccaneers, the Patriots, and most recently, last episode, I did the Arizona Cardinals. Today, I'm going to be doing the Cleveland Browns, one of the more interesting teams in the entire NBA. I'm going to go game by game on their schedule, where I believe they will finish as a record. To start off, I've called the Cleveland Browns the Noah's Ark of football teams. They have two good tackles. They have two good, wide receivers, OBJ, Jarvis Landry, two good running backs, Kareem Hunt, and Chubb as well. Two good tight ends, Njoku and Hooper. They solved their tackle issue with Conklin and the kid out of Alabama as well. Two good corners, two good linebackers, two good defensive ends, Garrett and Olivier Vernon. The list just goes on and on. Cleveland might have to be one of the most talented teams in the league. I think their problem last year was coaching and quarterback. Now, they gave up on the coach. They hired Kevin Stefanski, who I like a lot. This team reminds me a lot of some of those Minnesota Viking teams that he coached under Case Keenum. Again, Baker Mayfield reminds me a lot of Case Keenum with a stronger arm. They have a very, very, very similar play style. Now, will they have that 13-3 record? I don't necessarily think so, because their division is a lot harder. I trust Baker Mayfield to have a bounce-back season. I think he will have a bounce-back season in this system with all of this weapons. If not, I think it's Baker Mayfield's last season as the Cleveland Browns quarterback, and he will be moved. I think they will remove him from that job. There's just too much talent on this team to underperform. I know how hard their division is, but I mean, man, 2 good tight ends, 2 good wide receivers, 2 good running backs, 2 good tackles, 2 good defensive ends. I think a good coach now in Kevin Stefanski. The excuses are up for Baker Mayfield and the Browns. They need to deliver this year. So let's get right into it. Week 1, Browns-Ravens. Not an ideal way to start. The Ravens are just too overmatched, man. They're going to win 14 games this year. Again, I like Cleveland a lot this year. I really do. I just don't think they're on Baltimore's level. Not many teams are on Baltimore's level. They did beat them last year, so I say the game will be close. I'm going to give the slight edge here to Baltimore. It's also in Baltimore to start week 1. New coach, new system, not a lot of OTAs for the Browns and everything like that. Well, the Ravens are pretty much bringing everybody back and only adding, not, subtracting. I'm going to give this one to the Ravens. Browns start 0-1. Now, here comes the Bengals. In my opinion, they're going to win this game. I like Joe Burrow a lot. I think he's a really good quarterback. Reminds me a lot of Tony Romo. Unfortunately, their roster and their coach are just not there yet. They're not on the Browns level roster-wise, and I don't think they're on the Browns level coaching-wise. For once in the Browns' life, they have actual coaching advantage. I'm going to give this one to the Browns. They get their first one of the season during their home opener. Start 1-1. Next up, they play the Washington football team. The Washington team's going to be a bottom 5 team in the league. Browns should steamroll this one relatively easily, and I think the Browns will win this one, giving them 2 wins on the season. Next up, Dallas Cowboys. It's a close one. It's a very, very close one. I'm going to give the edge to the Cowboys here. Again, it's in Dallas. They still don't have everything together yet. I think it'll be a close one. I'm going to give the slight edge to Dallas on a field goal or an overtime, starting the Browns at 2-2. Next up is the Colts. I like this Colts team a lot. I think their only issue is Phillip Rivers. I think he's done, man. You can argue that I know Tom Brady's still good. You can argue that Drew Brees is still good. You can even argue that some of these other guys have still got it on the older side. Phillip Rivers is not one of those guys, unfortunately. He is a shot fighter. His arm is a noodle now, and he turns the ball over a lot. There's a reason why the Chargers preferred Tyrod Taylor over him. I'm going to give the Browns this win, putting them at 3 wins on the year. Next up is the Steelers. Now, I think the Steelers will be an improved team due to Ben Roethlisberger. Again, he had 3 surgeries in his elbow. Who knows how good he will come back. This game is in Pittsburgh, so I am going to give it to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And also, that coaching-quarterback connection, they already have an established relationship, Big Ben and Mike Tomlin, that is. While Stefanski and Baker are kind of going to have to work it out. So that starts off the Browns at 3-3. Shaky start, but this is where it gets better. They face the Bengals and then the Raiders. I think they're going to win both of those games, putting them at 5-3. Again, the Bengals are just not there yet. The Bengals are going to be maybe the most exciting 3-4 win team I've ever seen in my life. Not Joe Burrow's fault. I think Joe Burrow will be really, really good. I think he'll put up a lot of stats, a lot of numbers. Their team, their roster is just not, there yet, in my opinion. So I really do believe that the Browns are going to sweep the season series against the Cincinnati Bengals and take over Ohio completely. The Browns should win this one, as well as the Raiders game. It's in Cleveland. I think this is Derek Carr's last year as the Raiders quarterback. They got a lot of nice pieces, but again, the Browns roster is just too much. And I do like Kevin Stefanski. I think he's going to be a good head coach in this league. I'm going to give this one to the Browns. Next up, 2 tough games, Texans and Eagles. I'm going to say they actually beat the Texans in Cleveland. Now, they lost DeAndre Hopkins, and who knows how good. I don't trust Bill O'Brien. I don't trust this Texans team anymore. The only person I trust on that team is Deshaun Watson. I'm going to give this one to Cleveland, putting their wins at 6 on the year. Then they have to go against Philadelphia. I'm going to give it to Philly. They have the quarterback advantage, the coaching advantage still in my opinion, and their roster is good enough to hang around with Cleveland. So they're going to stay at 6 wins after the win against the Texans, and they're going to lose to the Philadelphia Eagles. Next up, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars, the easiest game on their schedule by far. They should steamroll the Jacksonville Jaguars and get to 7 wins from there. After that, they have the Tennessee Titans. Very close game. It's in Tennessee. Very, very close game. I think Derrick Henry will be a monster, though, and I trust Ryan Tannehill to get a sneaky, very, very close win against Cleveland here. They're going to stay at 7 wins. I think they're going to suffer a close loss to the Tennessee Titans toward the end of the season. And then, of course, they face the Ravens again. I think they're going to lose that one as well. I just don't trust the Cleveland Browns to beat the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens are just too good of a team. Last 3 weeks, though. I think the Browns are going to go into the playoffs, right? There's 7 wins here. I think they win out. The last 3 weeks of the year. Giants, Jets, Steelers at home. Call me crazy. I think the Browns win out, get to 10 wins, and I think they make it into the playoffs. So hear me out again. Ready? Last 3 games of the season, after they have 7 wins. Giants, Jets, Browns. I think they steamroll both New York teams, and I do think they get the win against the Steelers at home to clinch a playoff berth, especially with that extra team in the AFC. I think 10 wins will be enough to get you in the playoffs. I think they'll finish second in their division. I think Kevin Stefanski will get some Coach of the Year votes. I think Baker Mayfield will have a bounce-back season. And the Browns will be looking really, really strong and really, really good, specifically towards the end of the season, going into the playoffs. There'll be a lot of hype around the Cleveland Browns again. I think they get to 10 wins and get into the playoffs. I think they have a floor of 7 wins. I think at worst, if everything goes wrong for the Browns, their talent can get them to 7 wins. And I think no matter what, Baker Mayfield's not going to have a worse year than last year. Max, the Browns are a 12-win team if they somehow can beat the Ravens once, and then beat a team like the Titans or the Eagles as well. Max, they're a 12-win team in my opinion. I think they'll meet somewhere in the middle at 9 or 10. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say the Cleveland Browns get to 10 wins. I think that's what's going to happen to Cleveland. Let me know what you think. Now, quickly, for the next couple minutes or so before I end it, since I got some extra time, I want to give you this Patriots theory that I thought about today. I think the Patriots are going to shock the world. Not with their record. I think they're going to be a bad team. I think the Patriots are going to go 6-10, have a top 10, probably top 7, maybe even top 5 pick in the NFL draft. They are going to shock the world with their selection. Trevor Lawrence will go to Jacksonville because they're only going to win 0-2 games. And Justin Fields will be the presumed, they need to take Justin Fields. Similar to how Josh Allen went before Josh Rosen, Trey Lance is going to go before Justin Fields. Now, Trey Lance might transfer because the FCS season might be canceled. Either way, Trey Lance last year, 28 touchdowns and 0 picks for North or South Dakota, one of those two teams, wherever Carson Wentz went. Again, 28 touchdowns, no picks, ran for over 1,000 yards and 14 touchdowns. What's his pro comparison? Cam Newton. That's what everybody says, that he reminds a lot of people of Cam Newton, maybe a more accurate version of Cam Newton. Who do the Patriots have right now? Cam Newton. Hear me out. Bill Belichick has been having his eye on Trey Lance this entire offseason. He saw 2 months of Jarrett Stidham as QB1, realized he's not the future, he's not it, get Stidham out of here, find a replacement. Brings in Cam Newton, Josh McDaniels, and Bill Belichick have a year, an entire football season to tinker and come up with a scheme and a game plan that fits around a mobile, big, strong-armed quarterback like Trey Lance, like Cam Newton. Cam Newton will have some success enough to bring in for another year. Trey Lance will sit under Cam Newton for about half a season. And then the Patriots are already having a system of Trey Lance that he can fit in. Instead of drafting a guy like Lance and then having to come up with a system, they'll already have a system in place. They know things that will work, things that won't work with a guy like Trey Lance. Again, hear me out. Patriots win 6 wins. Instead of taking Justin Fields, they take Trey Lance because they already have the system that works for a big, strong, mobile quarterback like Cam Newton, like Trey Lance. That's just my personal opinion. Again, I don't think the Patriots are going to be very good. I think they're going to get 6 wins. They have maybe the hardest schedule I've ever seen for an NFL team. I think they max out at 8 wins. And while I like Cam Newton, he's not the Cam Newton he once was, and he definitely can't do better than Tom Brady did with this roster. Again, 6 wins for the Patriots. They'll take Trey Lance over Justin Fields. That's my recent Patriot theory. Let me know what you think. All right, that is going to do it for today's episode of the GSMC Sports Podcast. Again, thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, leave us a 5-star review, and follow us on all social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We would really appreciate it. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next episode.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.